Hi there, this is the Common Magician, and I've got something kind of interesting for you here today. This should be fun. I've got a deck of cards here. It is shuffled. We'll give it another quick mix here. Now, if you were here with me, I would have you do a couple of these procedures here. You just have to kind of trust me and take my word for it as I do this on your behalf. But if you were here, I would have you cut the deck very freely and replace the cut. And if there were some other people here, I'd have them cut as well, maybe cut shallow. Someone might cut more towards the middle. Someone else might cut a little bit more deeply, get a bit of a random mix here of different locations. And then I would have you cut one more time. I'd have you cut the top off and place it right over here. And what I'm going to do is going to be very kind of difficult. I'm going to try to figure out where you cut. Okay, so I'm going to try to figure out where you cut. I believe that you cut over here to the 8 of spades. 8 of spades. Not here, but over here. And if we take a look, we'll see that indeed you cut to the 8 of spades. Now that's pretty crazy. Okay, that's pretty crazy. But let's try something a little bit different. Okay, we're going to try something a little bit more unusual. Again, the cards are shuffled thoroughly. You can see that that's the case here. But I want to try something else. I want to see, instead of finding a location, or rather finding a card at a location that you determine, I want to find a location at a card that you determine. Okay, so a location at a card that you determine. So I want you to very quickly, just off the top of your head, think of any card that comes to mind. Any card at all that comes to mind. Let's say you think of the 5 of hearts. The 5 of hearts. Now this is freely thought of, I just thought of it, and you could think of anything you wanted, but the 5 of hearts, I think the 5 of hearts is at card number, number 13. I think it's at 13. 13 as the deck sits right now. Now how could I know that? I don't know, but I'm pretty sure that's what it is. I would have you deal from the top, face up right here, down to 13 to see if we find the 5 of hearts. And you could do this on your own. It'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. It'd be pretty amazing. 1 chance in 52 if the 5 of hearts is right here. 13, 5 of hearts. Now I know what you're thinking. That's pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing that that could happen. And you're starting to wonder, how is it that that could happen? You're probably thinking about this. Well, wait a minute. Wait a minute, Common Magician. I've given you one piece of information and you're giving me the other one. What if we did this differently? What if, from this mixed up deck of cards, what if both pieces of information were completely random? Completely random. So I am not offering any information, right? But everything that we're trying to determine is freely randomized. Well, let's see if we can do that. I have a shuffled deck here. We started over. And we've got here on the top, decided by the shuffle, Ace of Hearts. Let's not worry about that right now. I have 2 words, suit and number. Suit or number. Suit or number. Go ahead and pick one. Just say one. Suit or number. Suit. Okay. So this will determine the suit, and we're going to go with ace as the number. Okay. So get you in on this to kind of help randomize this a little bit more. So we have the ace of the hearts. So that doesn't work. This is already the ace of hearts. And I want this to be fair. Okay. Since we already have the ace of hearts in our control, let's try another one here. So let's see. Hopefully this is not a heart. It is a diamond, so we're going to do ace of diamonds. Ace of diamonds. Now, I need one person here to remember that. Now, I don't have anybody here, so I'm just going to have to try to remember it. But I'd have you think of that. The ace of diamonds. And we need to randomize another piece of information. We need to also have a random number, because remember, I'm not going to give you any of the information here. It's going to be completely random, completely freely selected here. So what do we have here? On the top, we've got a 3. That's a low number. We could go with that, but let's make it more interesting. We'll go a little higher. 7 and 3 is 10. 10, 15. Yeah, we'll go with that. Yeah, 15. We'll go with that. Okay, so 15. So you have ace of diamonds, and we have 15. Ace of diamonds and 15. I need you to remember that. So I would have one person remember ace of diamonds, another person would remember 15. We'll give the cards another shuffle here just to be completely fair. Okay, so shuffled up. And at this point, I'm not even going to touch the cards anymore, theoretically. I'm going to have to do it because I'm alone here. I've got no friends. So I'm alone. You're not here with me. But assuming someone was here, they would do the rest of the work here. There's a person by the name of David Berglas, a very famous magician, a mentalist performer. And he would do these amazing publicity stunts in the 1950s and 60s that were very, very public kinds of events, where he would divine certain pieces of information or do great feats of skill and get himself into the papers and on television. And one of the feats that he used to do with his audiences is this effect that we're talking about right here, which would become known as the Berglas effect, where you'd have two completely random pieces of information, each out of 52 choices, a card and a number. And both of these things would be found to confirm each other in some mystical, weird way. Okay, so I have a deck of cards here, 52 cards, completely randomly shuffled. We have the ace of diamonds, I believe. We have the number 15. And I would have somebody else deal this out to see if that has occurred. If we have pulled off the holy grail of card magic, the Berglas effect, any card, any number. Let's see if that happens. So I would have a spectator deal from the top, face up right here, down to 15. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Now, if this is the ace of diamonds, just so you understand, the chance of picking one card as someone else out of 52 choices is 1 in 52. The chance of picking a number 1 out of 52 as somebody else is also 1 in 52. But the chance of picking the same thing, assuming that the ace of diamonds and 15 are the same thing, picking both of those things twice in a row is 1 chance in 2,704. 1 chance in 2,704 that these two things would confirm each other. They would be the same thing and they'd be picked twice in a row. Let's see what we have here. Number 15. The ace of diamonds. Now I know what you're thinking. Look, how is this possible? How could you do that? How could this be done? It doesn't make any sense. Well, there is an explanation. There is an explanation in all of this. It's not probable, but if you really think about it, if we were able to kind of go forward and look back at everything that had already happened, we would know what was going to happen, right? Makes sense. If we could go forward and look back at everything that had happened, we would then be able to determine what has happened, right? I know it sounds like time travel. It's kind of like what I'm talking about here, right? But really, if we were able to go forward and then look back, we would know everything that has happened, and that would be an explanation. Now, I can kind of demonstrate this for you a little bit further, and it's not going to seem like much at first, but just kind of bear with me here. We got a shuffled deck of cards. Let's play a game. We're going to play a couple of rounds of Texas Hold'em. Okay, so it's a poker game where there are 5 cards in the end for each player. Now, each player gets 2 hole cards. So that's 2 cards that are in the hole, their hole, right here, like this. Okay, 2 hole cards. And there's 4 seats here. So seat 1, 2, 3, and 4. The dealer is seat 4. And then there would be what's called a burn card. That's 1 card that's thrown away. And then there'd be 3 community cards that are turned over. We call this the flop. Okay, so 2 hole cards. We don't know what we have in hole cards for each position, but that's the flop. There'd be another burn card, and then there'd be another one. It's called, I believe this is called the turn. And then there'd be another burn card, and already this is looking interesting here. Not sure what to make it of. There'd be a burn card, and then there'd be what's called the river. So we have the flop, the turn, and the river, and then we have these hold cards. And let's just see what we've come up with here. Okay, so let's start with a dealer. Position number 4. I've got a pair of 5s. A pair of 5s. So that's not that great. But let's see here. Let's see if we do any better than that. Over here, position number, I don't know. Let's go position number, let's go over here to 1. What do they have? Pair of queens. So they beat me. Yeah, that's it. Pair of queens. They don't pull off very close to a flush, but just a pair of queens. Over here, position number 2 has a pair of threes. Pair of threes. So far, this guy's winning over here. And then position number 4. Oh, they get a flush. They win big time. Look at that. Heart, 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 heart. So you can use any 3 from the community with your whole cards to get up a hand. So position number 3 wins. Now, I know this doesn't make sense right now. Okay, just remember this, though. Remember. Okay, remember what happened here. So it looks like everybody got a pair, but position number 3, seat number 3 got a flush. Okay, let's do that again. I know this is kind of boring, this gambling kind of stuff. Okay, but again, you know, everything is completely random here. Everything is completely freely selected. Okay, out of a shuffled deck. Just playing a regular card game. We'll follow all of the procedures. We'll give it a shuffle and a cut. We'll deal out another round. So remember, everybody gets 2 whole cards. If you didn't know how to play Texas Hold'em, you're going to learn now. Now there's some betting that goes on in there too. We've got our whole cards here. Remember, position 3 won the last one with a flush. Everybody else had pairs. We'll burn 1 and we'll put out the flop. And that's really scary off the bat. And we don't know what people have, but we've got a couple of kings in there and a 10. We'll do another burn card and then we'll turn the turn over here, and then we'll do another burn card and then the river. So I don't know what you can make of this. I don't know, there's a couple of options there. A few options going on. Let's check seat number 3. They did well last time. They have nothing. Nothing at all. So they did not fare so well this time. So if they went all in, they would be in trouble. Probably. Let's see what I've got. 6, 7, 8. Chasing a straight, but it doesn't quite work out. Doesn't quite work out there. So I've got nothing. Over here we've got 2, 6, nothing. Nothing, nothing, nothing. Let's see, position number 1. There it is. Look at that. 4 kings. 4 kings. 4 of a kind and king. So position 1 wins. If position 1 took everybody in, they would clean them out right there. Okay, so we had 2 rounds of Texas Hold'em, dealt cards, free selections here. First round, everybody got pairs. Second, position 3 got, seat number 3 got the flush. Second round, everybody got nothing, but seat 1 got 4 kings. Now, what in the world does this have to do with time travel? Well, here's what it has to do with time travel. There's a box sitting right here, and I haven't touched it. I haven't touched it the whole time. Now, if you were here, you could open up this box. You could open it up, and if you look inside, you might see something interesting. There's a little piece of paper in there, and you could very fairly, you could do this, not me, but you could very fairly dump that little piece of paper out, maybe. When you take a look at it, very fairly, you could do this. If you open it up, you would see that it unrolls. Now remember, if we could look back on all of these events, it would be a perfect explanation for what has happened. If you unrolled this one piece at a time, you would see some interesting writing here. It says, seat 3 gets a flush. Everyone else gets a pair. That's what happened in the first game. Keep going. Seat 1 wins with a 4 of a kind in kings. That's exactly what happened in our card game. So you see, there's a perfectly good explanation for this. Perfectly good. If we just look back on what has already happened, we can tell you what's going to happen. Hi there, this is the Common Magician with kind of a special tutorial here today. This is a bit of a follow-up on a previous video that I put out. I put out a video recently concerning memorized decks and a particular stack that I had kind of come up for myself. so that it would be kind of a more intuitive way for me to memorize a deck the way that I think. And I shared that with you for anybody that might be interested in. And it wasn't so much so that you would use the stack that I came up with, and not that I'm suggesting that my stack is better or something than some of these other things that have been used for decades and decades. But it worked for me, and the lesson there is that you should do something that works for you. Whatever fits your style. If you can use a stack that doesn't necessarily look fully shuffled, but you can handle it in such a way that it looks fairly shuffled to people, but it's a very intuitive stack, then that's what you should do. If you would prefer to show all the cards out there wide open and you need something that looks really shuffled, then you need to, use a stack that fits that, something that is intuitive enough for you in that manner. For me, I wanted to be able to show the cards, all of the cards, for at least a little bit of time, some length of time, in a spread, and it looked shuffled. And that there were things in there that would throw off any indications as to what was going on. There was a certain pattern of illogic to it, a pattern of non-logic or no logic, illogical sort of sequence, so that people would not notice that it really is stacked in a fairly intuitive way. And this is the one that I came up with, and of course it doesn't even have to be sitting in order. It could be cut, as long as you know where the cut is at. You can get it back into order. And that, looked good to me, and it was very intuitive. Now, I would invite you to go watch that tutorial, where I explain that, and rather than go over it all again here. But what I do want to show you is, if you are interested in this stack, or just conceiving of your own stack and how you can use it in the different ways that a stacked deck can be used to perform various effects, I made a manuscript for this one. So this is the Common Magician Memorized Deck Stack. It's got quite a few pages in there. I'm going to post it in the description here, and I'm just going to kind of take you through a little bit of it right now. Now, what I've shown you is a demonstration of some tricks that you can do with the stack. And I explain these tricks in the manuscript, as well as some other ways to use the stack. And there generally are a few ways that you can use a stacked deck. Now, I'm going to divulge something, and I put this in the manuscript here. The cards here, in order to do one of the things that I did, the way that I did it, they needed to be marked. This is a marked deck. Now, it's a B deck, and you might be thinking, how in the world would you mark a B deck? Well, there's ways to do it. And I did mark this deck, and I don't usually use marked decks, but I think I'm going to start using them more often, and I'll explain why here in a minute as I talk about deck stacks and how marked decks kind of go together. They kind of fit together quite nicely. But I decided I would find a way to mark these B cards, and I marked them, and they work for me. And I really got into it, and I started marking up some other cards too. So I've marked a couple of bicycle decks using some fairly standard methods. And then I came up with one that I really liked, a way that I wanted to settle on. And I actually marked this deck up really well. And I'm going to spend, I think, a whole tutorial in the future, the very near future, to discuss marked decks. But this is a marked deck, and it's marked in a way that I'm pretty satisfied with, that I think people would have a difficult time catching on to. You'd have to really know that markings are there to notice the way in which they're marked, and yet they're fairly easy for me to see and to read, using a principle that everybody knows, but using it in a different way, kind of mixing together two different ideas. So marked decks, it's actually even marked as a one-way back too. So if you wouldn't notice it by looking at them, but it's actually one-way back. So tricks that involve reversing cards end for end, and then finding them or locating them in that way because of the design, you can do that with this deck here because it's been marked in such a way to handle that. So marked decks. Very quickly though, on this idea of stacks and marked decks, why use a stack at all? And certainly if you're going to have a stacked deck, why would you use marked cards? Why would you mark it? Well, plain and simple, there's a whole bunch of literature out there, a wide vocabulary for tricks involving decks that are in use, shuffled and in use. But the truth of the matter is, if you're going to be doing a routine for somebody, if you're going to be hopping around and performing for people, or if you're going to have a deck of cards on you, at a family event or at a group, a place with friends, why wouldn't you have marked cards? Why wouldn't you have it stacked? They're your cards, you know. They're not somebody else's. That kind of repertoire of tricks done with decks shuffled in use is really perfect for situations where you don't have your cards, where you're borrowing a deck, right? And even then, when you're borrowing a deck, you're not sure of the conditions, so you're kind of limited in even what kind of sleights you probably would do in that situation. But the truth is more often than not, for most people that do this kind of stuff, you're going to have your own cards with you. So, hey, why not have them stacked and marked? They might as well be. Certainly, they might as well be stacked if you're going to, you know, be doing a set routine. It's just something to consider. You can do things, I'm certainly convinced of this, that you can do more incredible feats with a stacked deck than you can with a shuffled and unused deck, particularly on the mental kind of level, in terms of mentalism, the mind reading, the divining, the guessing of certain things that are happening. You can do that better with a stacked deck and certainly with a marked deck than you can with a regular deck shuffled and used. So if you're going to be doing a routine and you're going to have your own cards, why not consider this? There's an idea out there that, you know, good magicians don't use marked cards, and that's baloney. You know, the best magicians use marked cards. In fact, really, if you really want to fool magicians, if you're looking at my channel to learn how to fool magicians, first of all, you're in the wrong place, because that's not what we do here. But if you wanted to find out that, how to do that on this channel, probably the one first piece of information I would give you, the one piece of advice would be to use a marked deck, because magicians do not suspect that. They suspect no such thing. We kind of have it in our minds, this judgmental attitude, that if you're really good at it, you wouldn't use that. So we don't suspect it. And, 9 times out of 10, if a magician is going to fool other magicians with a card trick, they're probably doing something super duper sneaky and gaffed, and using cards that are probably marked in some way or set up. So, let's get into this, and we'll talk about the different ways to use this particular stack, and then you can use that in your own stack and try to conceive of ways to use it as well. First of all, I'm not going to go over how to build the stack. You can watch another tutorial to kind of see how that gets put together. I will just say this. I find, and it's in the manuscript, it gives it an explanation for stacking procedure. It is easiest in my mind to separate by suit, put each suit in the numerical order of the stack, stack the suits together, and then go in and replace the wild cards. And you won't know what that means until you look at that other tutorial or read the manuscript. But the face cards act as wild cards in my stack. And then you would go through and you would just insert the wild cards and take out the substitutions to finish out the stack. So I think you separate into suit order, stack the suits, put the suits in order. You have to anti-Pharaoh and Pharaoh the suits together to do that, and then replace the wild cards in to get that done. So, quick thing about putting a stack together. A lot of really well-known and widely used stacks have the ability ingrained in them to shuffle using Pharaoh shuffles or overhand shuffles or a combination thereof to get from new deck order into the stack. This stack does not have that ability that I'm aware of. I'm not even going to search for it. I'm pretty sure you can't do that in any reasonable way. Get into the stack from new deck order. And I don't care about that. It's just me. I don't care. And when I think about the reason why you would need to do that, there's 2 reasons why. The one is a performance-based reason, and that is if your performance style lends you to be performing with a fresh deck of cards that you're taking out of the card box and they're in new deck order. And starting with that, if that is part of your routine, then it would be beneficial to be able to do that. Who does that, though? Not many people really do routines like that. In fact, most people who use stack decks walk around with their deck in stack. And a lot of people who use a stack deck will have a regular deck on them and a stack deck on them, and they'll switch them in and out. They'll do a deck switch before they try to shuffle in. So it's not really useful, I think, in that way for most people, unless you have that built into your routine. And there's very few people that do that unless you have, a nightly gig that you're doing that's in a parlor room where you're doing card magic, and that's how your routine begins. Unless you're doing that, it's not really practical, I think, to worry too much about that. The other good use for it is that if you just are trying to put your stack together, it's a lot easier to stack new deck order and then do various shuffles to get into your stack than it is to stack one card at a time, okay? The manuscript, though, will explain it. There's a section on stacking procedure that goes over what I talked about, plus you can look at that other video, and I think it's fairly easy to get into suit order and then to put the stack together, okay? So I'm not worried about stacking from new deck order. There's not a way to do it that I know of. I don't think that really matters. If you're coming up with your stack, don't worry about such things. It's not that important, I think, for most people to be able to do that. So we'll just kind of push that out of the way. Now, what the manuscript does talk about, though, is it talks about what the order is, how the order is put together. And the order actually looks like this. It starts with the Jack of Clubs and ends with the 10 of Spades. So that would be the order. It talks about how you can put it together and what the order is. It gives some tables to kind of analyze that for memory, and it gives a position, it gives a card, and then it gives a rationale. Why is the card in that position? Because there's a logic behind this that I think is more intuitive than a lot of other stacks. And then I also give you a section for groupings for additional rote memorization. So I just have a couple of tables on here, particularly this one here with the wild cards, that you can look at if you download that. You can see there's a table there that you're just going to, maybe you're just going to want to memorize that table. If you're going to do some rote memorization, that's probably the part you're going to spend on. Now, it's set up in such that you don't really need to do a lot of rote memorization, as you can see in that other tutorial. There is just a couple of rules put together in this in terms of a numerical order and then where those jacks and queens and kings go. So that if you get stuck in the middle of performance and you can't remember something, you can actually reverse engineer on the spot and know what that card is in a matter of a few seconds if you just ask yourself a few questions. So I have those tables on there for you to look at. I even have visual aids for full rote memorization if you want to. It gives you groupings of 10 cards in order, 1 through 10, 11 through 20, and then it has the numbers associated with them so that once you are very familiar with the stack, you can go back and then start to do some rote memorization, because ultimately it is better. It is better to just know things automatically without having to go through procedures in your mind and thinking through rules. But I did put that into the manuscript for you to use, so I didn't leave that out. There is a general pattern of thinking in this. If you're trying to figure the number to the card, the first thing you want to think about is what section is the number in. So you're thinking about section 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. Okay, there's 5 sections of 10 cards, and the number of the card is going to tell you what section you're in. Okay, so the number to the card. You have a number, you're trying to figure out what the card is. So what number is the section in? What section is the number in? Then you go to what is the, given the section and based on the number, odd versus even, what is the suit? So this is divided into suits so that hearts and spades take up kind of the first 2 sections, and clubs and diamonds take up the second 2 sections, and then there's a mix in the 5th section. Now, there are clubs and diamonds in the first 2 sections, but they're special, and they're just in there to kind of throw off the visual. For the most part, the first chunk of the stack is just 2 suits, and the second chunk is 2 suits, and the last is a mix, and even that has an order to it too. So, number to card, what section is the number in? Given the section and based on the number, odd or even, what is the suit? And then ultimately then what is the value of that card based on the wild cards and where those things are at. And then you end up with a card. The opposite, the card to a number, works a little bit differently. The first thing you want to think of is what is the value of the card? Because you're given the card. What is the value? Is it odd or even? And then that tells you what the suit is, right? Value and suit. And then given the suit, the second question is, what section does the card belong to? Because if it's a spade or a heart, it belongs in the first 2 sections. If it's a club or a diamond, it belongs in the second. And the number will tell you then what section specifically it's in. And then what sequence number, 1 through 10, does the card indicate? So what is the sequence number? Is it 1 through 10 in section 1? Is it 1 through 10 in section 2? Is it 1 through 10? And then that gives you an overall number. So then you can come up with what the number is based on those observations. So you can read through the manuscript and make sense of that. Then I go through a section which we're going to talk about now, which is tricks with the stack. What tricks can you do? What do you do with a stacked deck? So this is going to be more of a comprehensive conversation on what do stacked decks do. Now, comprehensive but not complete. There's a lot of things you can do with a stacked deck. I'm just going to go over kind of the biggies, the big things that you can do with a stacked deck besides just finding a card at a number or a number at a card. There's actually quite a few things you can do. So first of all, you can do feats of mentalism, get that right, feats of mentalism with a stacked deck that you can't do with a regular one because you know things already about it. You know where things are at. You can perform a vast array of mentalism effects, and not merely with the cards, but rather you can use the stacked cards as a tool for what appears to be a randomized selection, but it isn't. It's predetermined, right? So you could use the cards to come up with a number. You could use the cards to have something seem to be freely selected and it isn't. You can use it in that way. Specifically, if you have multiple out predictions, right? If with a stack, I could take a predetermined grouping of 10 cards. If I cut at the 2 of diamonds, right, in my stack, I would know what these 10 cards are already. I would have that memorized. I would have that known. And from those 10 cards, I could have 10 multiple outs. That would be, 5 envelopes that have been prepared with 2 sides, and in each side there is a prediction. And I could have them in different places, one in a wallet, one in a back pocket, one next to the wallet in the back pocket, one in the front left pocket, one in the right. And I could have this prepared such that I could have a multiple out on any kind of prediction because the stack already predetermined what my 10 cards were. I didn't have to go searching for them. Now, the ultimate way to use this is if you have an invisible deck. An invisible deck is 52 multiple outs, right? In that any card can be turned over inside of the deck. Any card at all that could be thought of. So I have multiple outs with my invisible deck, and I can use it as a multiple out for my stack. And I give an example of a trick that you can do like that in the manuscript. So feats of mentalism with multiple outs. You can do that with a stacked deck because you already know the predetermined order of everything. Okay. Next thing that you can do is you could do card at a number. And we did that on here. So a memorized deck would be able to give you, or a number at a card, right? The number of a card. And the way this would work is that you're either given one piece of information or another. You could have someone cut the deck at a place, and then you would be able to determine what the card is if you peeked the bottom of the cut, because you would know what the next card in the sequence is. So the next card in the sequence after the 7 of diamonds is always going to be the 5 of clubs. That's just the way the stack works, right? The 7 is a 4 in my stack. Diamonds and clubs work in the same grouping. So in this case, if I had a 7 of diamonds, it's the 4th one in that grouping. The next is going to be a 5. It'll be a club, 5 of clubs. Now, the way this works with marked cards is I can do the impossible. And I can determine not what this card is based on a peek here, but I could determine what this card is based on an indication over here, right? So on my marking says that this is the Jack of Spades here, right? You see, that's what it is. And I know that what would come before my Jack of Spades in that position, number 22, is going to be the 2 of diamonds, and I would be able to identify that based on my marking, okay? So I can use a marking to kind of put my stack into overdrive, hyperdrive, warp speed here, and I can use the markings to know cards that I can't even see. So that is a way in which you can use marked cards to do card at a number. Conversely, if a card is named, and actually the way I did it on here is I like to do the stack, now that I know it more and more here, I take the top 2 cards and I cut them to the bottom. And the reason is because a lot of the cards, the 2s, the 3s, the 5s, the 6s, the 8s, and the 9s are in that sequential order, even though the suits change. And by cutting 2 cards out, I really hide that point. So if I had to count deep down into the deck, let's say to, 28, which would be the Queen of Spades. Now that I've cut 2 cards down, it won't be 28 anymore. It will actually be 2 back from that. So it would be a 26. So if I count through this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. You can see that nothing aligns because it's 2 cards off, right? And I would go all the way down until I got to that position where I have the Queen of Spades right there, okay? And it would be at that new location, -2. So that's how I'm carrying it now and how I've been kind of practicing with it to disguise the sequence. But, you know, knowing the stack, that's how I could use a card that is given to me and then identify the number from that. So you can do card at a number, number of a card, and then you can do some other things that are really, really sneaky because of the properties of the stack that we're going to talk about next. So the stack has some intuitive properties that are built into it, not on purpose, but they just happen to be by coincidence, that can allow you to know some things that are going to happen. We'll take a look at that next. So if I were to deal out these cards one after another in a poker hand or in some kind of, I don't know, other situation where you would have dealing, I would be able to know every time what's going to happen because the cards are what they are. They're in a stack. So it doesn't mean that I can make them. I would necessarily have to make them do something. I would just know what's going to happen. And because I know what's going to happen, that can outline what my effect is going to be. One of these things is a presentation of any card at any number, which gets pretty close to what the Berglas effect really is, where two things seem to be thought of randomly. Now, instead of thinking of them, we're going to have them randomized by a shuffled deck. Now, there's a sense in which, and I presented this on my comprehensive any card at any number, I presented this as a really good way to get close to the Berglas effect, especially if you're performing for people and you're video recording it, because you can cut the video at a certain point in the presentation where the selections have already been made and people are thinking of them, and the cards are shuffled and you turn them over to the spectators. You can sort of begin your video presentation at that point. And as far as a lot of spectators are concerned, they think that's where it starts too. They don't realize that the presentation was already going on. To them, the presentation begins when you start telling a story and the cards are shuffled and turned over. So to them, you come really close, if not bang on, to the Berglas effect, that holy grail of card magic. But really, everything is forced. Now, I found some places in here, 3 that I put in the manuscript, and you can probably find more, and you could probably find this in any stack, where doing this method has a predetermined outcome for this kind of presentation of any card at any number. So the first one that I have here is that if we cut the natural stack here, beginning with the Jack of Clubs, you actually have a scenario where you have the Berglas effect playing out. So this is the stack beginning with the Jack of Clubs right on the top. So the Jack followed by the 2 of Hearts would give you the Jack of Hearts as your card. Okay. Now there's a way to present this that I talk about. I think I mentioned it in the manuscript. If not, I'll mention it here. I did in the presentation. I show the first card after having false shuffled. And then I say 2 things, number or suit. You pick one. Number or suit, which one do you want? If they say number, then you say, great, well, this is the number we're going to use, the Jack, and then we'll put the suit here. If they say suit, great, this is going to be the suit to that number. It is an equivoque that just makes them feel like they determined something about this. But it's you know, I've learned from watching a lot of really great performers that we probably don't use equivoque as much as we ought to. When you have a choice of one of 2 things, you should always pose it in an equivoque question where it doesn't matter what they think or what they say. No matter what they say, they can feel as if they had an impact on the outcome, even though they didn't. So this is just a way to do that. You can say number suit, pick one, number suit. They say suit. You say, great. So we're going to pick the suit for this Jack here. It's going to be the heart. So Jack of Hearts is going to be the card. And then what you do is you just put these on the bottom and then you do a fresh false shuffle. And you end up exactly where you were before. So I did a 0 shuffle sequence that brought me back to here. So the next cards are going to be these. And in the presentation that I gave you was 3 of spades, 7 of hearts, 5 of spades, queen of clubs. And then I have a 4 of spades here. And what I do in this presentation is I add up just the first 4 and I leave this one out of it. And I say, yeah, that's good enough. We'll stop right there, right? And it brings us to 27, I think. So 27 is the final outcome. And I ignore this card completely. It doesn't matter. Why not? You know, this looks random anyway. So 27, say, yeah, we'll go with that. 27 with these 4 cards. And then I take 1 extra card, and that actually puts, guess what? Let's see what happens at 27. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27. There it is. It's just built in. It's right there. Okay. It's going to happen every time like that. The wonderful thing about this is because of the way it's presented, I just take these cards and I put them back on top and I'm still in stack. So if I've done everything the way I presented it to you, cutting the Jack of Clubs back to the top means I'm still perfectly in stack. Okay, so I gave you two other instances of where that works out in this stack in the manuscript. I used a different one on the presentation there. And there's even a red herring where I throw away one card. I believe it starts here, Ace of Diamonds, and I say, oh, well, the 10 is a heart. We can't use that. But it just gets me closer to where I need to be in the stack. And you can find this any way you want. What you do is you just take a couple cards here, and I don't know if we can find it in this case here, but the 9 of spades, right? Ace of spades, 9 of spades. So where is the 9 of spades in this? It's actually all the way back here. It's way deep. So first of all, I would look at that and I would say, forget that one. That's too deep to count into, okay? So I might go somewhere else. Maybe we'll go back here and we'll do the, I don't know, the 10 of diamonds. 10 of diamonds. I see the 10 of diamonds is right over here, okay? How many cards away is it? One. It's one counting itself. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. 19 from this point. So I have some cards to work with to see if I can get to that point. 3 and 7 is what? The 10, 15. How many did I say it was? 19? So 15, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. 15 gets me one before. So you could do a presentation like that if you want to. Count down to 15, right? And then end up there. Is that right? Did I do it right? 15. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Right, I could do that. Or I could play the game I did on the first one. I could count out 4 cards and just use the first 3. And now I'm actually 15 away. So you can find a bunch of different places. Just take note of them and practice them and get them on. You could use as a pretense for your number. We're not going to use that face card. It's too confusing. So you skip a face card and then use just number cards. Or sometimes you need the face card and you need to count that one in. So that's a way to do it. So that's any card at any number. I have 3 presentations in the manuscript. You can find many more in any stack that you have and find a way to do that Berglas effect sort of presentation. It looks really clean with the right presentation because you're really not doing anything. Once you get to the start of the trick where the cards are shuffled and turned over, you don't touch them anymore and they do everything. So there's an idea for you, a few things that are inherent in the stack. They just are in there. They're part of it. A few ways to accomplish that effect. And let's take a look at some other possibilities here with the stack. So some other possibilities in the manuscript are just some poker deals, and I give you an example of 2 and how they come out. You can find poker deals anywhere. Really, starting at any card will give you a poker deal of some kind. You just deal them out and see what they do, write down what the outcome is, and use it. And you can predict things that are going to happen before they occur in a gambling demonstration. The cards have determined it for you. But in a sense, I'm giving away the secret there in my presentation when I say we are looking back in time. The stack means that time has already occurred. No matter where you start in a poker deal, it's already been determined. It's already happened. You know what it's going to be. You just deal it out, see what it is, note that, and then use that in a presentation. So that's what I did. I gave you a couple of those in the manuscript, just to, some cut to here, 2 of hearts, and it gives you a poker deal that ends up this way. Cut here, king of spades, it gives you a poker deal that ends up this way. So you can use that any way that you want to. I used it as kind of a generic prediction in a routine that talks about time travel. So poker deals, that's it in a nutshell. I want to talk about something else, though. You can actually do a hands-off ace assembly using this stack. So what you would want to do is have it in regular stack. And if you had multiple people, you could run through a hands-off ace assembly. You would have one person follow a few procedures. So they might deal out 4 stacks for 4 people. and everybody gets 10 cards. So you would have them deal out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. This is after a false shuffle, by the way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now, you would follow some other procedures, and you'd have 4 spectators do this, or you'd have a couple spectators do it with each one of these stacks here. But you would have them, deal through these maybe in a way such that they would come down to 4 aces. And I'll tell you why this works. Because if you look at the top of each pile, they're all right there because they are in the stack incrementally 10 cards apart. So I give you a procedure in the manuscript where you can do an ace assembly where people do that. So it might follow such like this, where you have them deal, each person in their stack would deal 1 card and then do a shuffle, right? And then deal another card and then do a shuffle, right? And then deal a card and then do a shuffle and deal until they want to stop. So each person would do that. They would deal and then shuffle, right? And then deal and then, deal off a card and shuffle and deal. And everybody would do this. And for the sake of time, we'll just do this real quick. So this is what everybody's doing. And it seems to them, this seems really impossible, right? Because they're doing something that they're making too many decisions on that nobody else could agree upon. So they would do that. It doesn't matter where they stop. And then you can get to the end where they all turn over their piles to reveal that they have actually dealt to the aces. And the cool thing about this, apart from this discrepancy here, because I was going quick into the same thing, because you are mixing the cards, you would have a mix of cards in there. You can see that these piles probably don't line up quite right. This is just a coincidence here. But you would find that the piles are different, and it's their own shuffling that is taking everything out of sequence for that reveal in the end. So you could have a hands-off ace assembly. That's impossible. I mean, this is a situation where you're not doing anything. The spectators are doing everything, and a stack can do that for you because it's been prearranged to do certain things. So there's an idea like that. I also talk about in the manuscript a couple of other ideas that I've mentioned here. Pseudo-peeking. So that is peeking cards without having to peek the cards using a marked deck. So if you have a deck marked, you can look at the marking and know what an adjacent card is. But alternatively, pseudo-peeking is where you're peeking at cards that you have every right to look at. That is the adjacent key card to a card that was selected to identify what card they had. So if you don't have them marked, you can just look at adjacent cards and know what they've got. So do a false shuffle, have them freely select a card, look at the key card, the card right next to it, and know what card it is that they have. So pseudo-peeking, where you don't actually have to peek their card, you can peek the one next to it. And then you can do any peeking trick. Any trick where you would do a peek, you can then follow through because you've peeked a card from your stack. Mechanical deck applications, like I've already talked about with reference to markings on the deck. You can do a variety of different markings that also work with the stack. So you might have your stack in stack order, but put a marking on it that marks 1 through 52. You could do that and make it a mechanical kind of deck to help you. You could also have the markings for the names of the cards and those kinds of ideas there. So make a mechanical deck, use markings, and then any mechanical deck effect that you want to do, you can then do with your deck. And then forcing. Obviously, as mentioned in some of the previous ideas there, particularly with the any card at any number, you can force using the stack. Because you know where things are at in the stack, you can force. You can do a shuffle and deal off cards and know what's going to be there because the deck is stacked. And you can force things on spectators or use cards like we did in that any card at any number, put cards together to make a new card, a new identity randomly. But it isn't random because it's actually stacked and you already knew what the outcome was going to be. So you can do any force trick using the stack to force the cards that you desire. And then what I did is on the manuscript, I gave you essentially the routine that I just demonstrated for you, and I spelled that out for you, a way to routine together some ideas, various tricks to come up with a set that you would do as a show for people that would look really impossible to them because of the stack and what the stack enables you to do. And in the end, the stack is all out of order because of those poker deals. The stack is all done. So that's one final thought there, is that it's important to understand that there's two kinds of ways to use a stack. You can use a stack in such a way that maintains the stack, but you can also use a stack deck in a destructive way, and that's fine. If you have a routine especially that ends you at the end, and you're at the end, you're not doing any more, you might as well destroy the stack. So there's nothing wrong with that. Go ahead and destroy the stack. People like Leonard Green and Tamarez, they have stacked routines that they use, and at the end everything's a mess, and it's okay because the stack has served its purpose and they can reset at a later time. So just think about that. Yeah, using a stack. You don't even have to stack a whole deck. And also, one last note, you don't even really have to memorize a stack. You can use a stack, you can use mnemonica, you can use my stack, you can use another stack, you can use this stack, you can use that. You can shuffle a deck and make your own stack as long as you write it down so that you can come back to it. And just look at the properties of it like we talked about and see what it deals out, and come up with a routine based on that order of cards. So you don't even have to use a stack deck as a memorized deck. You can use a stack deck just for its properties. You can learn mnemonica tricks using mnemonica stack without having to memorize it if you want to. You're just not going to do the memory tricks. You'll have to use those stacked ordered tricks instead. So just some comprehensive thoughts on stacked decks, a closer look at my stack, a free manuscript for you to take a look at if you want to learn a very intuitive stack that doesn't take a whole lot of time to memorize, and some tools in there to do a bit of brute force memory if you want to learn it really well and apply it. So there you have it. Merry Christmas from the Common Magician, from me to you, and happy holidays, the Common Magician stack. Good luck with that and happy magicking.